excited today to introduce to you guys, or if you guys have not been on a webinar with Field Agent and SupplyPike before, the amazing Field Agent team. Today we are going to be covering some really fun insights that the team has uncovered, doing really cool surveys and research on the back to school timeframe. Before we get started, some really quick housekeeping items. First and foremost, as always, we will be recording this webinar as well as sending you guys out the slides and a recording once we are done with our webinar today. So no worries about that. You don't have to worry about taking notes or taking screenshots unless you want to. You will get a copy of this deck and this webinar once we are done. And then second thing, as you guys probably know by now, living in the Zoom era, if you guys have any questions at all that you'd like us to answer throughout our presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A button. It's 2 speech bubbles. It's located within the Zoom toolbar, and I will be monitoring that throughout our presentation today and definitely kind of making sure that we get your questions answered. Also, feel free to just throw any thoughts, insights, feedback that you guys have in the chat. We only ask that you use your questions using the Q&A function, just because that helps us to keep track of it a little bit better. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into it. So really quickly, really excited to introduce ourselves. So if you guys have been on a SupplyPike webinar, you have probably heard my voice way too many times, but my name is Stacey Tan and I lead the retail strategy and retail insights team here at SupplyPike. And we are so excited to be joined by Rick West today. He is a CEO and co-founder of Field Agent. They are an amazing local company and we'll explain a little bit about what they do in a couple of slides, but we will be your Sherpas today in the journey through back to school. So really quickly, I wanted to kind of talk through what the agenda is for today. We are going to cover a whole bunch of content as always, like we always do at SupplyPike. First 10 minutes, we're going to be covering the back to school 2022 updates. So just some interesting things that we have found out this year. We're going to talk through kind of what is the same between this year's back to school, kind of what we expect to see and, what has, we've seen in past years. What's different, so what is changing this year for back to school from the surveys and research that we've done so far. We'll talk through a little bit on back to school insights and action plans. So based on the research that the Field Agent team has found, what can you do about back to school? How can you make sure that you're making the most of back to school season? And then as always, we'll leave about 10 minutes at the end for just general questions and discussion. So if we're not able to get to you guys' questions throughout our presentation, we'll definitely save those towards the end. So very quickly, wanted to give you a short introduction on who we are. Again, if this is your first time here at a SupplyPike webinar, we are SupplyPike. We're a Northwest Arkansas-based company, and what we do is we create cloud-based software or tools to help our CPG partners maximize their cash flow. And we do this in a couple of different ways. So we've got a bunch of really fun apps here. The first one is called Retail Intelligence, which is really focused around sales and replenishment analytics. We've got an app called OTIF Radar, which is focused on Walmart's on-time and in-full compliance program, so helping you get to the bottom of your root causes of OTIF fines, as well as fighting those fines. And we also have a really great app called Deductions Navigator, which is really focused on helping you to kind of identify invalid and also dispute those invalid deductions that you receive from retailers. So one of the really cool things about Deductions Navigator is, as I mentioned, we are based in Northwest Arkansas. So we did start kind of in the Walmart and Sam's Club space, as one does when you're in this area, but we launched into Kroger last year, and then we also just launched into Target last month, which is really exciting. And we have plans to kind of launch in Amazon later this year. So if any of those retailers sound interesting to you guys, definitely feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to learn more. And again, as I mentioned, we're joined by Rick West today from the Field Agent teams. Again, Field Agent is also based locally in Northwest Arkansas. In fact, they're like 5 minutes away from our office, which is really awesome. And they are amazing at offering fast, reliable solutions to help brands meet today's retail challenges and provide a lot of really cool services like location-specific audits, reviews, insights, and sales. And really exciting stuff. I don't want to steal too much of Rick's thunder. I think he'll be talking talking about this later on, but they just launched their Plum Marketplace, which has a whole host of self-serve solutions. So you can actually go on there, look for services that you're interested in that are related to kind of location specific things. And you'll be able to kind of check out on the spot and actually get reports back, just again, completely self-serviced. As the slide mentions, this can be launched with a few clicks in a few minutes. It's really, really cool stuff. Rick and his team showed us how it works a couple of weeks ago, and we were honestly blown away. So for Field Agent, over 2 million app downloads in 7 international markets and over 2,000 brands served. So really, really cool stuff. Anything I missed, Rick, or that you wanted to add?
I'm glad we're recording this, because I think we're going to take that clip and we're going to put it on social media. You're a great spokesperson. I think it was really pretty impressive. Hopefully you practice that all day long. You just nailed it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Cool. All right. So we are going to go ahead and kind of jump right into the content. So as you guys know, if you are in the back to school space, the school buses will be warming up soon. As you guys know, back to school season at Walmart kind of officially starts in that July, August timeframe. So it is just about that time of year. However, one thing that we have found and through our research is that back to school might look a little bit different this year. This is probably not a surprise to anyone, but we live in a very, very different kind of global environment than we did last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, dealing with issues like inflation. We are still obviously trying to kind of coping with the post-pandemic era, still trying to find that new normal. Gas prices are on the rise. You have the Russian-Ukraine conflict. So, it all seems like very macro type stuff. But as I'm sure you guys have seen kind of just in your own businesses and even personally as shoppers, it's affecting the way consumers are thinking about shopping and consuming kind of on a micro level. So as I kind of mentioned and alluded to, Field Agent did a back to school survey utilizing their platform last month from May 10th through 11th. And they actually surveyed a total of over 1,400 moms of children entering K-12 for this year in the fall. So really quickly, just to give you guys an idea of the demographics, it was 100% female, about 66% Caucasian, 15% Hispanic, 13% African American, and 6% other. Now, as you guys can imagine, as schools are really starting to ramp back up and everyone is back mostly in person or in hybrid environment, 99% of the respondents are going to be making back to school purchases this year. So even though the types of items that people are buying and the way people are buying items might be changing, it doesn't stop the fact that, again, 99% of people are still going to be making these back to school purchases this year. So Rick is going to kind of talk us through a little bit what's the same, Rick. So what are you seeing that we expect to see kind of carry through from previous back to school seasons that can maybe act as an insight or a guide for the folks on our call today?
Yeah, so we, oftentimes we banter, Stacey, about there's nothing new under the sun. Everything's the same.
Yes.
Yep. We talked about the items we purchased when we were kids, or things we could remember, and you still buy some form of a lunchbox, but it might be with a Tervis tumbler in there, and it might be a different feel, but it's still a lunchbox. And crayons and Crayola and pens and erasers, it's still relatively straightforward. And so we looked at the items that were relevant to back to school buyers, and surprise, surprise, they're pretty similar. Now you do see things that have popped up that we probably never would have dreamed. Like, you want us to buy Clorox wipes or sanitizers, or that would have never been on our radar screen. So obviously those items creep in, they've been there for a while. Hand sanitizer keeps popping up. It gets a little bit more of a bump, and we could argue that's COVID, but we didn't ask the reason why. But again, pretty similar. So even as we talk through this, we think through there's function and form. The functions are the same. You need to be able to eat and to write and to capture, but the form will be different. And we're going to see that really get laid out in our talk today. The next slide, as we looked at it, was, it's not just about price, right, and family, but it is kind of a ritual But here's what I would argue that's going to be different this year. I don't know over the last 2 years how many parents walked into a retail brick and mortar with their kids.
Mm.
And if you're listening to this today, you're asking yourself the question, this year I would. So the experience could be different, but it's still the same function. There will be a shopping experience.
Mm.
Will more of that happen online? We'll talk about online versus brick and mortar a little bit later. But we know that brands are still important, right? And their requirements by school. Here's another one I saw the other day, and I had a friend of ours. She was just starting in her third grade class, the very first time that she was going to be in the class.
Wow.
And instead of saying, hey, send some money to help support, because, you know, parents or teachers, they have to buy a lot of their own stuff, which is unfortunate. That's another conversation for another day. But she treated it just the same way that you would do a baby shower or wedding shower. She had kind of a school shower list. It was all online. She pushed it out. And so we went online and we bought materials for her and her classroom online without having to go shop. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, that's so interesting. Oh, that's really smart though, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So she graduated in May. She has her class starting in the fall. She said, hey, instead of graduation presents, here's what I'm doing. And so my wife and I were like, well, this is great. And so, you know, we bought, you know, a couple of things that was really kind of cool. So gosh, I could buy this. And then we messed up. We waited too long and they were gone. And so it became just like a baby shower list.
Oh,
But I lay that out as that you look at the ritual. Back to school is important for kids. I thought it was interesting as I really started looking at the research. What does back to school look like for parents? So insight A for me, I have no data on this. Insight A is, what are manufacturers doing to really speak to teachers, which might be a different kind of back to school? It's not just back to school kids, back to college. Anyway, just a little fun little rabbit trail for you as I looked at this data. The next piece for us, guess what? What brick and mortar stores are people going to shop to? Going to visit 90% Walmart, 70% Target. Those two make sense, but look at the drop, and we've seen it fairly consistent. But you got the big two, and based on where you are, you could argue big three or four. But you get the big two, but it quickly drops down to other retailers that are there, and which is fine, and they're going to continue to be top. But if you think about retailers that cracked like that 30th percentile, Dollar Tree and Dollar General, didn't ask the question why, but you started out by saying, gosh, there's inflation, you've got gas prices. This survey was done in May, so that could influence your decision, saying, I might have gone to I may have gone to Office Depot, I could have gone to Walgreens, but maybe the dollar stores, even though it's $1.25 versus $1, another story again.
Yes.
But maybe that influenced the way someone would answer a question, because inflation is real,
Right.
and gas prices are real. Therefore, I would say, yeah, those jumped up to the 30th percentile. So again, food for thought as you're listening to this, and gosh, I need to follow where they are. It may not be a trend for the next 5 years. We all hope and pray that it's not that, but nothing's going to change in the next 2 months. It's going to change inflation and where we are and how people are going to buy. So that's a really interesting nugget on that 30th percentile.
I agree, Rick. And it almost surprises me just a little bit that even this year that you don't see them even higher, just because I know that people are really feeling that pinch in their wallet. So kind of to your point, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it shakes out over the next couple of months. I know there are some things in place to hopefully help with gas prices and inflation, but to your point, how much can they impact the next couple of months? So it'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah. And so you think about marketing, and this online piece is important for us, this next piece. You've got the big three, unless they pop up all the time. I mean, we could argue, do they change a little bit, but Stacy, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Go back to that teacher moment and that shopping experience. If I was marketing online, obviously you don't want to forget teachers. You don't want to forget grandparents. You don't want to forget people that are looking at this experience, because they are online shopping for other things already. And even though you may not have a child going back to school, does back to school mean something to you? So let's not lose sight of the generic impact that back to school has for general consumption, because the big three are going to continue to win. You got to be everywhere. But again, this just reinforces that I could take this survey tomorrow and 6 months from now, and for the foreseeable future, these guys are going to continue to be tried and true.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. So different. This is the exciting part, Stacy. What's different? Now remember, function and form. The functions are about the same, but forms begin to change, right? And how people engage. Let's look at the very first piece. It's still a majority in-store experience, okay? And we did a little bit of research to gosh, only 1% of BTS shoppers would only purchase all online.
That's so surprising, Rick. Do you think that it's because people are now, it's hopefully, fingers crossed, COVID seems to slowly be getting slightly more under control than it was for sure. I'm really surprised that it's only 1% that are going to be doing all the purchases online. Do you think it's the lack of availability online, or do you think people still like it's like you mentioned, it's a ritual. They still want to go in with their kids. It marks the start of the new year. Right. You still want to touch, see, feel. Like, what do you think is kind of driving that?
Sure. Let's pretend like the two of us work for tech companies just for kicks. Just for kicks. And a lot of what we do is talk about experience. If you think back to when you were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and you think about that experience, that euphoria that you had to go in and buy those pens and buy those crayons. If I can't create that experience for my child from an online perspective, then that's probably not going to change. I saw one person in the chat talked about in-store experience, right? It's that social piece. I totally get that. Yeah. But we're tech people. And people live in the metaverse, right? And right now, Zuckerberg's
man, don't give Walmart ideas, Rick.
Right.
Back to school metaverse.
But from a practical standpoint, is there a way to make the online shopping environment fun, a game? Can you gamify it? And I'm not saying I have any of the solutions to this, but without that 1% is not going to go more than 1.5 or 2. I mean, in order to make a step change, that social factor, that engagement, is still really important. And if you want your child to have a fun experience to be able to make that work. So what does that look like? I don't know, but that's where my gut is right now. I mean, what do you think about that?
No, I think you're totally right. And kind of as you were mentioning it, and I was, picturing myself as a kid, I mean, it was my favorite time of the year, right? It was like, hey, we're going to start school, and now we're going to go get all new books and new pens and new lunch boxes and things like that. So I do think it's, to your point, going to be very interesting how retailers start to incorporate and make the online shopping experience more of a social experience. So will the metaverse play a role? I mean, we kind of joke about it, but you have like fashion brands are doing fashion shows on the metaverse. So why not have the ability to go look at notebooks and go look at pens in the metaverse? So very interesting. I think I think back to school is going to be a really fun space to watch over the next couple of years, just because I think retailers have a lot more freedom to be creative in the back to school space as well, because it is kind of the K through 12 shopper. So they're going to be a lot more, number one, tech savvy. And then number two, they're also going to be willing to try different formats. I think, you're going to have kids that'll be like, yeah, I'll put on a VR headset and try to do back to school shopping that way.
Well, that's fun. And so then let's stick on omni-channel for a bit. Kind of go that next piece. We know that store pickup and delivery and drone delivery, we know those things are important. But for those that have more of a commodity type of product outside of back to school, the importance of being in the cart, checking out, because, right, it's really, really important, really important. And you also know that from a practical standpoint that while pickup and delivery is there and you're engaging, we know with supply chain disruptions, et cetera, you don't have the 4 chances. You probably have 1 chance to get something in your cart. Because if it's not in stock when I'm on, purchasing online, and that OPD issue is there, and I switch from Crayola to the other brand, I'm not going to have another chance in 30 days. It's kind of a one-stop shot. It's one shot at making this thing work. So when we looked at this, we looked at supply chain issues and kind of where things are. If I wasn't working with SupplyPike and I wasn't working with a couple other folks, I would start figuring out, do my in-stock levels, is everything locked and loaded? Is my OPD, OSA, I mean, is my inventory levels, is everything ready to go? Because I have one shot to make this thing work, or they're going to jump to a competitor and they're going to move on and my back to school shopping is over. So I think the omni-channel broadly is really, really important. And I think the next thing for us is kind of starting earlier. Surprise, surprise. As we look at that next slide about shopping earlier, because I don't want to be the last person to shop when I'm concerned about supply chain for 20 other things. So how quickly are we going to see the buses?
Yeah. Yeah.
How quickly is that going to come out, and how is that going to play out? So we asked folks, they said, hey, 1 in 4 said they would start shopping their back to school shopping before July 1st. So
that's great. That's so early. That's crazy.
It's one thing for in store, but if I just want to go online and buy the raw commodity things, I might go online because I know it's already available, buy it real quick. And then I might still take my child to go in store and buy other things. So maybe it truly is 2 shops, because I know at a minimum, I've got a school list. I have to buy at least these things, or I'm running all over the place because my child can't be the one that shows up with 24 out of 30 items on their list. That's not going to be my child.
Right.
So the moment you get the list, and we don't know when those lists come out, but they're probably already being, put together. But the moment I get that list, I don't think people are going to wait. I think they're going to be out soon, as fast as they can. I mean, look at this quote. We had a quote along these lines. This next quote we have, which is so cool. I believe back to school shopping will be more stressful than ever this year because I do not think stores will have sufficient stock. That's terrible. For a mom to be worried about that. And it's one thing to worry about feeding your child and gas prices and inflation. Now I'm concerned that my child may not have the items they need for their store list, and they're going into the 3rd grade or going to 1st grade for the first time. It's stressful. So all that being said, Stacy, I think early is going to be the key thing here. Again, same function, but the form a little bit different. And I know you guys see a ton of supply chain issues as well, and you're in the middle of that space all the time.
Yeah, no, you're so right, Rick. And we actually had Bill chatted in. All schools have a specific list for that school of supplies that parents need to purchase for their students. And the teachers are the ones that kind of dictate what their students need. And so brick and mortar stores will then cater to those particular lists. So kind of to your point, it's this multi-pronged issue of, number one, I need to make sure I have the exact items that are available. I need to make sure that the stores that I'm going to have those exact items. And then to your point, I need to get there early enough because I'm not going to be the only one that has this kind of thought process. So I can't imagine, starting to shop for school supplies as early as June. That's crazy.
Yeah. Now this next piece, as we get into the back to school shoppers are planning on spending more. 48% of parents shop for non-school related items at the same time. Here's that insight for me. When I looked at the research, we kind of bantered this here, is that I don't know if now this summer is really the first time that I get that core demographic mom in shopping mode versus online grocery pickup mode versus online mode. If this is the first time I get her back in the store to buy non-groceries, what am I doing in the store to make sure that the impulse items and the other items are right? It's all cleaned up, ready to go, because I might not have another chance like this. So if I'm Walmart, if I'm Target, I'm saying, gosh, I've got everything up front. I make it happen, but I might not get her back in that area again because she might go back to more online grocery pickup. I know my daughter, who's got 2 littles, her oldest is going into kindergarten. She's an online grocery pickup person. She does her order. She goes into the slot, goes to Walmart. Now you get it back to school. She's probably going to go in the store for the first time for her. I'll bet it's the first time in 2 years that she'll go in and really shop big Walmart. Now she'll do neighborhood market, a grocery pickup.
Sure.
But she does the big pickup. So from an insight standpoint, are you ready for it?
Right.
I mean, are you really ready for that surge of moms, that core, that holy grail of shopper? Are you really ready for that? And Stacy, I don't know. I don't know if people are thinking about that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Kind of that halo effect almost of back to school shopping. That's really, really interesting. And I'm kind of curious too, Rick, to get your thoughts on, they are planning to spend more just in general. I'm sure that, that market ring is going to be, or the basket ring is going to be higher. Right. Do you think that it's going to be, kind of more compared to previous years because is it a function of inflation, or do you think it's going to be, I need additional more electronics because that's kind of where back to school is headed? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, we probably could have done some crosstabs on this. And I think asking that question, you're a good client. You ask the question, we go back and do crosstabs and dig a little bit deeper. I think if you look at the number of children that either were still doing Zoom school last year, okay, and for the first time will be coming back in. So there's a population based on if you're urban or rural, you're actually coming back in. So you probably skipped completely last year. So that's part of the way you answer the question. The other aspect of it is it's the gas prices inflation that's coming in. And I would argue that, again, I've talked to a few moms here, it's a big deal this year. It's like, it's almost like I'm back to normal.
Yeah.
And I'm going to lean in. And so this is Rick's anecdotal emotional part that I would crosstab and say, let's talk to moms in urban that didn't have their kids go to school versus ones that are going back to in-person school, ones that did last year. And I think what we would find, my gut says, is that a lot of the rural places already in school might be more similar. There's an inflation, but I'll bet you others are really excited about this. And that goes back to that earlier point of, are you ready for them? Are you ready for that surge of the mom coming in to really be shopping again for this? It's going to be really exciting to look at the numbers come August, September.
Yeah. No, you bring up a great point, Rick. No, I love that. And kind of, I think you're so right. It's almost celebratory of quote unquote, as close to a return to normalcy as we can. Fingers crossed it stays that way and something random and crazy doesn't show up in the next couple of months. But I completely agree with you on the emotional piece. I think it's a celebration that, hey, we're going back to kind of the traditions and the rituals that we've been used to before. So those are some really, really cool insights, Rick. I'm so glad that the field agent team was able to kind of tease those out and share that with those on the call today. And now we wanted to kind of translate that into, hey, how do you go from, learning about these things, making sure that you're prepared for back to school season, and then figuring out how you're going, what's the best way to maneuver through back to school season and making sure that you're kind of capturing and maximizing your POS at the store. So, really quickly, we're going to build a little pyramid here, as you guys will see, but kind of at the foundation of the pyramid, and I don't think this is going to come to a surprise to anyone, is really the importance of that in-store availability and price. And Rick, you kind of mentioned that earlier on in our webinar today. It doesn't matter how cool your stuff is and how great your marketing is and how amazing your omni-channel is, if you don't have the product available and it's not at the right price, you're really going to stunt your ability to kind of grow within the back to school space. We kind of mentioned, earlier that 99% of the respondents from the field agent survey said they're going to purchase school supplies in store. So again, kind of bottom line table stakes is you need to make sure that you have your product available so that consumers can actually purchase those products. And Rick, I know you've got a couple of insights kind of along that as well.
Yeah, I mean that whole hierarchy, right? The in-store availability piece. I really think when you begin to look at that, you have obviously the obstacles that we're kind of talking about here, and that whole issue of in-store availability. But we started to look at this. I don't think we're training a new generation of shoppers, but it's such that apathetic, like, it's going to be an issue, like, price is there. And so because of that, we would argue it's like it's the single biggest frustration they have in shopping in general. And now you put the emotion associated with that, but this is my 6-year-old and my 6-year-old is not going to want. That becomes even a bigger issue. And then you start getting into, but they really wanted PJ Masks, but all you have is Spidey. And so you're telling me I can't get the PJ Masks thing that I want for my 6-year-old? And I mean, listen, at this point in time, if you really want to be Catboy and all you have is Gecko, this is bad, Stacy.
Rick, first, I love that you know those characters' names. That's amazing. I can
What's
tell.
really good,
Even
or don't
grandkids.
forget Owlet. Owlet's in there too. It's really
That's
important.
amazing.
You got the big three. And maybe for some of the mean kids out there, they want to be Luna Girl. And that's okay. I mean, it's all important. But but
I
but
don't
you
even know who these people are. I need to go
oh
look this
come
up
on. You
now.
don't know PJ Mask?
I know,
Oh,
I know PJ Masks.
okay.
I have little baby cousins, but I could not name you a single person there.
You don't know that
I love it.
Catboy's real name is Connor? I mean, come
No,
on.
no, I know. I'm
Come on.
ashamed. I'm ashamed.
So we play that out, but it really says bigger obstacles on the slide. Finding the price, the desired style or type. Now I play with that PJ Mask in there, but it's more than it's cherry, I'll get them strawberry. That back to school is not about cherry and strawberry. We started out by saying, I remember getting the Matchbox versus the Hot Wheels. I wanted Hot Wheels. And if I could get a Matchbox, I'm like, it's not Hot Wheels.
Yeah,
No one wants that. And so I'm going to shop early. I'm going to
right.
be stressed out. I'm going to buy it wherever I can. I mean, it's not a Christmas experience, but because of supply chain and prices, it sort of feels like that in the research that we're seeing. So product availability has never been more important because PJ Mask is it.
Mm-hmm. Never forget, guys. We're going to make that a hashtag.
Yeah, so that part's fun. Then you start getting into the inflation piece of it. Look at this quote, right? I hope my family can afford everything and prices aren't insane with the rate of inflation. And think about, can they afford everything? I mean, school lists are already expensive. And as the person mentioned earlier, there's a list, you're like, gosh, I guess they also need tissues and they need, wipes. I mean, it becomes real money. And then they get this salesperson we talked to here about the shoppers being more focused on finding the best deals and promotions. They get it. Pricing is going to be important. So we know that's true. And you could argue you could make deals all the time, but they're walking in with that sensitivity. They know inflation is there. And so as a provider, manufacturer of, or if you're a retailer listening, if you're a retailer looking at this, what are you going to do to not only alleviate that, but to take some of the stress off other than saying, here's a deal. There's an ambiance, there's a feel to that. And so we kind of get into this whole prevention thing. We get to the next slide here is that we would come along saying, gosh, you can guess all day long, but we do a ton of audits and we're out there looking today and shoppers are almost at a point where like they expect to see out of stocks. And that's so bad. I mean, you don't want to expect that coming in. And so we look at prevention and correction here. And so, we need to come alongside manufacturers and say, gosh, where are you today? And what are you going to do to make sure that facings look good? What are you going to do from a merchandising standpoint to make sure that experience is there? Because it almost becomes depressing at some point in time where you're there. And so then, we looked at this 2021, study that we did. Simple trapper keepers. It's just stuff you expect to have.
Yeah, standard.
I mean, we looked at 10, 9 were carrying it. Half the stores had more than 6 units in the store. I mean, it just feels like it's there. So that it's that scarcity mentality and no one wants that. Now, we know that society that's happened. That's been over the last year or so with supply chain, which is really, really important. So whether you're using a company like Field Agent, you're shopping the Plum Shop store or Plum Marketplace, you're engaging with SupplyPike, you've probably got 3 or 4 weeks to make sure that you're completely buttoned up so that when people come into those stores and they're shopping, it's the right product at the right store matched up with the list and stores have been executed. And when you're 2-3 weeks in and you realize you've only got 2 or 3 weeks left of the selling season, the replenishment is happening, tags are up. And Stacey, really, that's really where SupplyPike and Field Agent come in. We come along manufacturers to make sure that they're in the right place at the right time and things are set up for success.
No, and you bring up such a great point, Rick, that I think, a lot of people, especially if you're maybe newer to the back to school space or you've been awarded a back to school promo item, which is really great. People don't realize how short that selling season is.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, with kind of a regular mod, obviously you always want to have on shelf availability. Obviously, you want to have that 99% in stock, but you have so much more time to get there. So, hey, if a product, a store associate didn't set up the mod the right way, that's fine. We'll write an SSO for it, whatever it is. We'll flow that product through. Awesome. It'll get there eventually.
But think about consumption. So if you look at consumption, I'm going in and I get my really cool tumbler for my child. It's the perfect thing. It's against the PJ Masks, little water bottle. Consumption on that is 365 days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even with pens and crayons, it might be 6 months or 9. I mean, maybe they break, but it's not like, oh, I didn't get my snacks for school and I'll come back to shop again in 30 days. The consumption of this is such a long period of time. You really do have one shot to get it right.
No, you're so right. And can you talk, Rick, maybe just generally speaking, because I know Field Agent has done this for a really long time, just generally speaking, has the actual like getting, the back to school promos set up and actually getting the items on shelf, how successful has Walmart been in doing that kind of in a timely manner, making sure there are no holes on the shelf? Have they been improving over time, about the same, or what does that kind of look like just generally?
There was a day, Stacy, and I've been doing this long enough. There was a day, okay, there was a day that this would have never come up in conversation. The buses were loaded, the big yellow buses were in, things were piled as sky high as you can imagine. You walked in and there's every school list known to mankind, and you walked in and you had multiple varieties. It just wasn't a conversation. And then if you're really risky, you waited till the last second to see if you could get something on deal. Because you didn't want to have all these, stocked items you didn't need anymore. That's not been the case over the last year or so, especially in this last year for normal items. And obviously I have no idea what's going to happen this year. But with COVID and supply chain, that's just something 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we would have never had this conversation because everyone knew it and you pushed it and it just hit all at one time. So I think it's an anomaly. It's not because people aren't trying hard. It's not because you don't know what to do, but you really have to stay in front of this. And so we'll see what happens this year. I'm confident with the great suppliers that are out there. They're doing everything that they can, but there's a practical part of this that says we are going to have some issues.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you, Rick. And kind of to your point, it's, I worked in the supplier world for a really long time. And so I'm very aware of kind of the big, it's almost like Black Friday, the big push right before.
Right.
And so just in the environment and the supply chain environment that we're in today, it's tough. It's tough being a supplier, period. And so, anytime you can lean on tools, resources, outside folks to help, I think that can help to just make sure that you're able to get your product where it needs to be. It's hard. It's so hard. So kind of as we kind of mentioned, we're going to be building this pyramid here. And if the foundation is that in-store availability and price piece, so kind of step one is you need to make sure that your product is there and at the right price. Because if it's not even there, if it's not priced correctly, you're not going to get, you don't even need to have the next conversation about that first to market and replenishment strategy piece. And could you maybe, Rick, kind of talk through that a little bit on what you guys are seeing? I know Field Agent had some questions about that as well.
Yeah, so we asked that question is obviously we back to replenishment and kind of how many brick and mortar stores are you planning on visiting? Now, it shouldn't be a great surprise that 60% said 2 stores, and we could go back a few slides and we could have looked at, again, the big 3 and kind of where things are. So you can imagine in most of America, it's a Target, Walmart, or a Target, Costco. I mean, there's stores we would go look at. I'd have to go back and look, and I owe this to you, or we'll get Chris and I to go back. I think we asked this question before. I don't know if the more than 5 stores, that 12%, changed dramatically versus last time. If we don't have that, we'll get that. But if Chris could find it as we're talking about, but that part's going to be interesting to me. I don't remember if that skewed at all, but this bell curve is fairly consistent. Okay, which is most people are going to hit 2 to 3, but it's interesting to see if the more than 5 would kick in. But again, we know that in stock would require them to go, but this question was, do you plan on visiting? So even if everything's perfect, I'm going to go to a couple stores or 4 to 5 stores or more than 5 stores, coming in. And then on the same line, we started talking about brands. And as we looked at brands, listen, I know that you're more likely to find a different solution their first retailer visit, right? Are they more likely? And 50% of them said, yeah, could be a different brand or versus a different retailer. I mean, I think you could play it out, but it is kind of bad news to some degree, because we ask them, what are you most likely to do if you arrive at a store, but the brand you're looking for is out of stock, the stock option? They're going to stay right there. They're not going to spend another $10 in gas to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're not. You're going to buy another brand. Now, again, if my granddaughter's there and she expects to have outlet, we're gonna go find outlet.
We're gonna go. Yeah.
When you get into pencils and dividers and other things, I'm probably just going to buy another brand because it's somewhat, generic, other than some of those things are coming in. So that may not be the case for other types of items, but for back to school, you're probably going to just bounce over because you have to have the list, right? You have to get things taken care of. So the retailer's happy because they've got X, but as a manufacturer, you've got to make sure that you're ready for that very first visit, because you don't want to go to store 2, 3, and 4 and you just lost your share of wallet because it went somewhere else. So that's really, really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, Rick. And I'm kind of even thinking about it now. So I'm a first-time mom, and my little guy's, he's a little bit too young for school, but just shopping with a kid is tough.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a lot of fun. You're still trying to, manage a little baby while trying to get your weekly shopping done. And so kind of to your point, if the brand is not there on that first trip, like I do not have time to try and, oh, it's not at Walmart, I guess I'll try Target. If it's not there, we're going to go get Great Value or whatever it is, because it's, and I imagine it's probably the same for parents with older kids or multiple kids on the same trip. You're just trying to get so much done at once.
That's kind of a universal thing.
Mm.
And so we know that's true from a young mom coming in, universal. But I think what's important to that is you have to be able to take those universal things and apply it to this point in time and kind of where we are. And I think that's so important. And hey, good news is Chris just sent me something. Hey, check this out. So the more than 5 stores. Let's go back 2 slides. Let's go look at this. This is hard to believe. We actually pulled some data. More than 5 stores at 12%. In 2020, it was 7%. So it's up. It's almost up 50-60% of more than those stores as compared to it just a year ago.
Mm.
So that's, again, it's not a trend, but it's interesting that you jump up. So are they expecting that, planning it? Yeah. So that's kind of crazy, right? And just 1 year to see a number change like that is really interesting.
Yeah. And
so, Chris, thanks for that.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful and really interesting. And I think it even kind of drives back to those quotes that we were reading earlier, that just people are expecting that stores are going to be out of stock. So if you can be that brand that's in stock and in store, you are going to win the back to school season.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. So I think we're at the kind of the last part of our back to school hierarchy or pyramid of success. So obviously kind of, again, the foundation, in-store availability and price. You want to make sure that you're first to market, you're actually there so people don't go to a different brand. You want to have a really strong replenishment strategy, again, kind of back along with that. If you're not there, no one can buy you, and people are not super loyal to brand. It's important to them, but you're not, if they have an item that they need to buy and you're not in store, they're willing to switch, is kind of the insight. And then kind of the cherry on the top is, if you can kind of hit these 2 pieces, really important, of course, to then get your marketing right, get your displays right, get your e-com presence right. And Rick, can you maybe, I know you guys do a lot of in-store stuff. Can you maybe talk through what you guys have seen and the insights that you've learned so far?
I mean, auditing is welcome to our world. We do a ton of auditing. Obviously, we've got a pretty good umbrella, and we'll do marketing work, and we broaden it with Plum and the things that we're doing. But just in this one little photo we've got here, the images from 2021, imagine the sensation saying, I spent all this money, I'm pushing out displays, and we only found the display in 3 of 14 supercenters.
Wow.
I mean, that's crazy numbers, right? And there are times, I don't have an exact number here, but we see it anecdotally all the time, is that they love the display, but I ran out of your product and I put your competitor's product because I love the fact it's in a bus. So not only is it important to have displays in, but that display does have a decent life to it. And even though back to school is kind of over, if it's a really good looking display like these, which are fantastic from Frito-Lay, they've got a lifespan that could go well into August, early September. until that Labor Day kicks in. So you want to make sure replenishment continues. So as we do work with SupplyPike, you do work with us, we want to make sure that we continue to audit and we assess online and look at on-shelf availability to make sure that those things are continued to be replenished, because you spend a ton of money. You don't want to just throw those things away. So you got to make sure they get the up. It's got they're up, but more importantly, they have the right product and the right price on them. So really, really important to make sure that happens. And obviously that's kind of a sweet spot for us. And then you start getting to e-commerce. So I do go into e-commerce, and I couldn't find the items I wanted to in store, and I'm now shopping. It's a classic checklist, Stacy. It's a checklist we all know and believe, but don't underemphasize how important online reviews are. Are they fresh? The difference between having 50 moms saying this year it's an amazing product, or I did this, as opposed to once from last year, game changer, right? It's current. Having the right kind of photos. It's got to look good in today's world. Again, you're shopping, you got to make sure that's the case. You and I both know there's tons of scorecards and checklists you can do. So what type of assessment are you doing to make sure that your web page is up to speed? Do you have great copy? Are you listed for OPD and you think you are? I mean, if I look at a health check and I had 20 back to school items, I think the e-commerce checklist, if all you did was took these 5 items to make sure they're right, might be the 80 for the 20 that you need to be successful moving forward. I really do.
No, you're so right. And kind of as we talked about earlier, Rick, that importance of the omni-channel experience. So I know for so many people, step one is look online and then say, okay, does this kind of meet all of the boxes that have the pictures and the reviews and the SEO and all of that stuff? And then I go, okay, I'll go check it out in store. And then if it looks right, then I'll go ahead and pick it up. So you're absolutely right. Kind of step one is make sure that your e-commerce is taken care of. And we did have a question, Rick. So what does OPD stand for? So OPD, online pickup and delivery. And Rick, did you want to maybe talk through kind of what that is for Walmart? Or
yeah, I think especially if you're a Walmart supplier today, what's important about this is that just because you're set up to do online pickup and delivery doesn't mean that everything is synced exactly right with your in-store inventory. And if those things aren't synced exactly right, you think you're in stock, but you're not. And then all of a sudden you said, wait a minute, I know I look at my own hand, I've got 5 items in store, but someone wanted to do OPD, but they can't buy it. Why not? It's just not a matter of clicking a box. You've got to make sure those things are in sync. So for people like Stacy and SupplyPike, and we've got great products on our marketplace and Plum, we can come alongside you to make sure that you've done the health check, that you're in great shape, because the last thing you want to do is miss the opportunity to get a product in your cart. So when they come back, they buy that product again. So you got to do a health check there.
Yep. I'm completely aligned with you, Rick. All right. So I think we're kind of down to our last little bit here. Before we get into questions and answers, if you guys have any, again, feel free to drop them in the Q&A section, but really wanted to talk through what, kind of what are some tactical steps that you can actually take to make sure that you have a successful back to school season. So first one, kind of right off the top, is make sure that you guys are in constant communication with your Walmart team. This can be your Walmart buyer, your Walmart replenishment manager. If you guys have been on SupplyPike webinars with me before, you know I am not ashamed to beat a dead horse and talk about the importance of proactive, constant communication. So you guys can kind of see a quote here, which I fully agree with. Hyper focus on your supply chain, micromanage your inventory, your orders, and your forecasts at every step in the supply chain. As he kind of mentions here, the global supply chain is so tangled and disrupted that even those who are paying the closest attention and driving the highest urgency are the ones that will outperform. So again, kind of as Rick mentioned, and again, I kind of lived in the supplier world for a really long time. Back to school, just like Black Friday, used to be a program where you would kind of get your orders from Walmart, you'd send them over to your factory, work with them, make sure it gets in, and you're like, all right, 99% of the time it's going to get there when it should, mostly and correctly. But again, that environment has completely changed. You are getting delays at every step of the supply chain. It's delays getting things out of China or Vietnam or Bangladesh. It's delays from getting the product from the port into the US ports, delays getting them unloaded from the US ports and then into your warehouse and then into the Walmart DCs and then into stores and having store execution. So making sure that you are aware of what your pipeline looks like from your country of origin, even if it's made in the USA, and then understanding what the pipeline looks like from the time it enters Walmart's kind of DC system and DC network, tracking it all the way through, understanding what your sell through is, understanding and identifying item store level opportunities, and making sure that you're sending the right amount of product to the right store. So again, you guys have probably heard me say this a million times, but making sure that you are proactively and consistently looking at this data and not kind of shipping everything in at the beginning and then kind of waiting to the end and going, hey, what was our sell through? Did we have to get back to school season? I don't think that's going to cut it any longer. I don't know, Rick, would you agree with that?
I totally agree. We could argue it's getting back to basics, but in this particular environment that we're in, it's very, very sensitive. I think people are oversensitive, and we don't need any more stress than we already have in the system.
Yes.
So the basics part is so important. And that kind of gets into that this next slide for us, kind of the pop quiz. Our top, 3 or 4 things really quickly for folks as they listen to us summarize this. Basics, it's replenishment, right? It's making sure that your plan focuses on the right retail orders with high back to school, shopping traffic, right? The big 3. You got to be focused on brick and mortar. But if you ignore omni-channel, we're all naive to ignore that. And in-store product availability, the affordability piece, that's universal, but it's really important for us. And then lastly, that whole display piece. So it is the same function, different form. It is blocking and tackling. But again, you keep telling yourself, I've got a window that mom might be coming back into the shopping experience for the first time in a period of time. Am I using this to my advantage? Am I going to win? Realizing that in this case, they've already got 10 other issues they're dealing with. I don't want to have the issue be, I don't have what their child needs for school. Don't be that person. And so that's kind of the summary of kind of where we are.
Yep. Absolutely. So kind of to sum it up, and again, you guys have heard me say these a million times, but the goal, of course, is wherever you can is to be an A+ supplier to the retailer, no matter the shopping experience. Obviously, kind of our webinar and our chat today has really been focused on the back to school side, but you want to be an A+ supplier throughout the year for Walmart, Target, Kroger, Amazon, whoever you are in, because making sure that you are looking after your retailers throughout the year will help grant you additional opportunities like back to school, like Black Friday, like Christmas, and things like that. So you want to make sure that you're integrating the in-store and online experience. We have talked Omni a lot today, and that is also something that is top of mind for Walmart, Target, and a bunch of other brick and mortar retailers. You want to make sure that you are aware of and kind of tackling phantom inventory. So, we have a whole other webinar around phantom inventory, in which we actually did with the field agent team as well. So if you guys want to see that, you can actually check that out on Supplier Wiki. But you want to make sure that you are aware of phantom inventory. What is it? Are you tracking that? Are you making sure that there is no disparity between information about inventory and the reality about inventory, because sometimes they can be 2 separate things, which is a little scary, but true. And then, of course, you want to make sure that when you have earlier and longer lasting shopping occasions, that you are proactive. Again, you'll hear that from us a lot. Being proactive and consistent in understanding your data, communicating with your retailer is going to help set you up for success as a supplier. So yeah, hopefully that has been helpful for you guys. We did have a couple of questions. So I will go ahead and kind of and ask them, Rick, if you've got any feedback on this. So first one, back to school is a time for many new products. Do you have any advice for giving new products the best start during back to school season?
Again, it depends on the retailer, kind of what they're going to allow you to do, obviously. But I think the in-stock piece makes total sense. The question is, can you actually, have some display? Can you get it in front of people? But I think going back to that concept of the social media, online, or even the e-commerce effect of making sure that it's available for people to engage new items. So they're coming into store and it's there. I think it's going to be really, really important. And then I kind of saw the Frankie's question here, which is fantastic. Listen, Stacey, this may be the best question we've had in a long time. Okay. Because it has everything yet nothing to do with back to school, which is, since back to school predicted to be earlier this year, would you think vendors and buyers should work on an inventory regarding the trends for the rest of the year? If I'm you guys, this is when Stacey's back in her supplier days and my supplier days. I think apples to apples. If back to school is a red apple, I think the rest of the year is a green apple. I would look at this, understand what worked and didn't work. And this would be my test case. My poster child was saying, back to school, this is what happened. If we don't fix this, we're going to have the same thing for tailgating. We have the same thing for Thanksgiving. It's going to be the same thing for school, because we think we have an idea that shoppers are going to go back to the norms of 3 or 4 years ago. Back to school is going to say, yes, that's true. Or everything moved 2 weeks earlier, or they changed dramatically. I would use this and I would go drive that home to my buyer saying, we can't let this happen to us in other seasons. We've got to be prepared. So I love that question.
No, that's a great point, Rick. So I really pay attention to back to school this year. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see kind of how the ripple effects affect other seasons throughout the year. So great questions, you guys. Thank you so much. So we've got just a couple of minutes left. So I wanted to wrap us up really quickly. As you guys know, you are always open and more than welcome to contact us directly. That is Rick's email, my email address. Those are real addresses. We are real people. Please reach out to us. We will be more than happy to answer any questions you have. And you can also visit our websites at fieldagent.net or supplypike.com, where you can get a bunch more information about what Field Agent does, what SupplyPike does. And again, as always, if you guys want to have one-on-one conversations with us, please feel free to reach out and we'll definitely make sure that you are taken care of. So really quickly in the last minute or so, I know we touched very briefly at the beginning on what Plum Marketplace is for Field Agent. We wanted to make sure that Rick and his team were able to share this really, really exciting platform with you guys. So again, if you're curious about this, you can definitely go check it out after. But Rick, did you want to maybe talk about Plum a little bit more?
Yeah, it's the shameless plug. Well, I still have you for a minute. Shameless plug. As you're trying to come up with solutions, we've created a marketplace that allows you to come in and shop, self-educate, and self-select all in one location. So you don't have to Google and go all over. You can come into a marketplace that's specifically designed for manufacturers, brands, and retailers that have products at retail, and that retail being brick and mortar or via e-commerce scenario. And we have tried and true tools, products, and solutions that people can DIY, self-select, and engage with, that I think is going to solve a lot of the problems that we spoke to today. So we'd love for folks to look at plumshop.com, engage there a little bit, and let us know what you think.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rick. It's like I said, Rick and his team showed this to us a couple of weeks ago. It's pretty cool. So I highly, highly encourage you guys to check it out. And the last bit, our turn for a slight shameless plug. Hopefully, if you guys are on our mailing list, you've already received an invitation for this, but I'm going to go ahead and shout it out again. We will be doing a live in-person event, the first one this year. We're so excited about it. Talking about Walmart's item swap. So if you guys have heard about the item swap initiative and would like to learn more about it, please feel free to join us. It is going to be at the Natural State Brewery. It's located in Rogers, 4 to 6 p.m. Really exciting stuff, because we actually have a representative from Walmart that will be there. He is actually the one that is leading the item swap team today. And so if you want to get some direct questions answered, this is a can't miss event. So again, if you guys would like to join us, please do. It's going to be today, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Natural State Brewery in Rogers. And we hope that we will see you guys there. And I think that is all I've got for today. Hopefully this was helpful for everyone. And if you guys, again, have any other questions or need anything from Rick, myself, or the field agent or SupplyPike teams, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we look forward to seeing you guys at the next webinar. Thank you so much, Rick, for your time today.
It was fun. Talk to you soon.